In the game of power, strength means nothing if you lose control.
What if your sharpest weapon was the silence you carry? Not your voice, not your title, not your need to prove anything. Imagine walking into any room, a tense boardroom, a courtroom full of eyes, or a family dinner where every word feels like a trap, and shifting the entire dynamic, without raising your voice. Not through dominance, but through presence. Not by speaking more, but by needing less. Because the world listens differently when you no longer perform for its attention. Most men today are trained to speak quickly, react fast, fight for every inch of validation. But the ones who truly move the room, they don't chase control, they become it. They don't outtalk, they outsee. They don't overpower, they outlast. They don't escalate, they wait and watch. You think power comes from charisma, from certainty, from confidence. Maybe. But real power? It's the man who can sit still in chaos. The one who's already won, before anyone else knows the game began. This isn't about tactics. It's about tempo. It's not about being feared. It's about being unreadable. Because the most dangerous move is the one no one sees coming. So if you've been feeling like your words are getting louder, but your presence is shrinking, if you're tired of being pulled into noise, battles, roles that don't fit you anymore, then this isn't a video. This is your return. Let's begin. Before you ever outplay anyone, you must stop being so easy to play. Most people walk into the world pre-programmed. One wrong tone, triggered. One moment of silence, anxious. One disagreement, defensive. They don't lead the room. They leak into it. We think intelligence is speed, sharp words, fast comebacks, mental gymnastics. But real intelligence is space, the space between impulse and choice. The space where ego screams and you say nothing. The space where pressure builds and you breathe instead of break. That space, that's where real power lives. Your greatest liability in life is not your flaws, it's your emotional predictability. Because the person who knows your triggers owns your behavior. If they know how to make you explain yourself, rush your words, tighten your breath, raise your voice just to prove you're still in control, then you're not in control at all. You're just a reaction on autopilot. But what if you paused? What if, instead of answering immediately, you noticed? The shallow breath when someone questions your worth. The invisible flinch when you feel unseen. The heat rising in your chest when someone misunderstands you again. These aren't random. They are maps. Maps to the parts of you that still seek external permission to exist. But here's the breakthrough. Once you notice them, you're no longer trapped inside them. Stillness is not withdrawal. It's calibration. Silence is not weakness. It's refusal to be owned. And emotional mastery is not about being numb. It's about being deliberate. Because when your nervous system stays steady under fire, you become unreadable. And unreadable people are unplayable. I remember the version of me that couldn't sit still inside discomfort. The man who mistook loudness for strength, who thought a faster voice meant a stronger stance. When Rico betrayed me in business, I didn't breathe, I exploded. I wrote, called, threatened, exposed, noise, pretending to be power. But all I did was show him where I could still be moved. I wasn't wrong, I was just obvious. And in this world, obvious men get maneuvered. Subtle men shape the board. So ask yourself, where are you most easily knocked off center? Where do you flinch, even before anyone touches you? That's where your next level waits, not in more effort, in less permission-seeking. Because the truth is, you don't need to react to be strong. You don't need to prove to be seen. And you don't need to win every battle to win the war. Sometimes the sharpest move is to simply not respond. And when you do that long enough, you'll notice something subtle shift. The people who once fed on your reactions now have to face your absence. And your absence? It's not silence. It's signal. Power doesn't flinch. It watches. It waits. And when it moves, it doesn't explain. You want to get ahead? Then stop listening like the average man. Most people only hear what's being said. But the sharpest in the room, they listen for what's missing. They know that truth rarely hides in words. It hides in tension. In the way someone clears their throat before a lie. In the 2-second pause when a question hits too close. In the overly rehearsed story that sounds just a little too smooth. Words are camouflage. But energy? That's intel. I used to think I was good at reading people, until I sat across from a woman named Elena, a quiet artist, eyes like still water. She said almost nothing during our first conversation, but her silence wasn't empty. It was watching, testing whether I'd perform or just be. She noticed the way I reached for the glass 3 times while telling my story. She noticed the change in my breath when I mentioned my ex-business partner. She noticed everything I didn't say, and later reflected it back to me, without a word of judgment. That was the day I realized most people aren't truly seen because they're too busy trying to be understood. Here's the key. People leak truth when they believe you're not looking. They reveal everything, in the small. In the way they speak to the barista. In the sudden shift in tone when a certain name comes up. In how their voice starts strong, then trails when conviction runs out. In how they fill silence, too quickly, too loudly. You don't need a psychology degree to read people. You need stillness. You need space between your observations and your reactions, because the moment you react too fast, you distort the data. Let's break it down. A man walks into the room. Loud, magnetic, all eyes on him. He owns the air. But when another powerful man enters, he shifts slightly, almost imperceptibly. Confidence or overcompensation. You'll only see the difference if you're still enough to watch. Ask yourself, why does someone dodge a topic? Why do they always say it's complicated when asked about a certain part of their past? Why do they rush certain stories or repeat others too perfectly? Avoidance is not nothing. It's data. Repetition is not truth. It's armor. You're not here to judge them. You're here to understand them. And understanding begins with neutrality. Back in the early days, I was a man of noise, always ready to speak, argue, prove. I thought that if I could talk enough, charm enough, dominate the room, I'd win. But then came Kai. He barely said a word when we first met. Just sat across from me with the calm of a mountain, and every time I tried to impress him, he just watched, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear myself saying. I learned that day, you don't read people by pushing. You read them by pausing, and in that pause, they reveal themselves. Now here's the twist. The people you're trying to figure out, they're also trying to figure out you. So while you're scanning them, they're scanning you. If you react to every word, every tone, every shift, you give them your entire playbook. But if you become the stillest mirror in the room, you become unreadable. And unreadable is unplayable. Let me leave you with this. When someone says little, listen deeper. When someone says too much, listen sideways. But when someone is silent, don't rush to fill it. That's when the truth slips through. Silence is not the absence of data. It's where the most important data lives. So don't just hear what's said. Learn to read the air, because the one who reads without judgment sees the whole board before the first move is made. Most people are terrified of silence. They think if they pause, they lose ground. If they don't respond fast enough, they seem unsure. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't freeze the moment. It reframes it. In every intense interaction, negotiation, argument, confrontation, there's one invisible battleground. The empty space between words. And the one who owns that space owns the frame. People rush to fill silence because they fear being exposed. But in their rush, they reveal everything: insecurities, pressure points, false confidence. Silence? It's a mirror. Hold it long enough, and the other person will show you exactly who they are. You ask a question. Then you wait. Not because you don't have more to say, but because you don't need to. And while they scramble to respond, explain, correct, or impress, you're already reading the shifts, the eyes that dart away, the pitch that tightens, the fidget that wasn't there 5 seconds ago. Those are not accidents. Those are entry points. People don't reveal themselves in noise. They unravel in stillness. I've sat in rooms where power wasn't measured by who spoke first, but by who didn't flinch when no one spoke at all. Because silence doesn't signal weakness. It signals weight. Think about it. You present an offer, then go silent. If they start talking, they're negotiating against themselves. If you start talking, you've already conceded something unseen. Silence breaks rhythm. It interrupts the script most people live by. And when they lose the script, their truth starts leaking out. Sideways, nervously, impulsively. But here's the warning. Silence only works when you are at peace with it. If your mind is racing, your hands twitching, your face begging for approval, that's not silence. That's fear, dressed in quiet. Real silence? It's breath. It's grounded. It's deliberate. It watches. It absorbs. And then, it strikes only when it must. I've used silence to win rooms I had no business winning, not with dominance, but with discipline. Rico once tried to humiliate me in front of a full board, made a twisted accusation. Everyone turned, waiting for the explosion. But I didn't react. I held his gaze, and I let the silence do the work. In that moment, I wasn't the one on trial. He was. And when no storm came from me, the storm turned inward on him. By the end of the week, his deals were falling apart. Not because I exposed him, but because he exposed himself to the one force he wasn't ready to face, a man who didn't need noise to hold power. Silence is strategy. It creates ambiguity. And ambiguity, when controlled, creates authority. Because when people can't read you, they project. And their projections? That's where they reveal everything. So next time someone tries to provoke you, don't answer. Don't defend. Just watch. Let the space stretch. Let them squirm. Let the silence do what no word ever could. That's when the real shift happens. Not in what's said, but in what's withheld. That's when you stop playing their game and start redefining the board entirely. Most people panic when conflict shows up. They try to end it, avoid it, or win it. But that reaction? It makes them easy targets, because conflict isn't always a threat. Sometimes, it's the perfect test. A test of presence, of self-respect, of your ability to hold your ground without losing yourself. If you know how to stand calmly in the storm, you don't just survive the moment, you shift the entire balance of power. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't about being aggressive. It's about refusing to shrink. Someone questions your ability, mocks your decision, raises their voice in front of a crowd. The old version of you would react, raise your voice back, defend, argue. But what if this time you didn't? What if you let the silence settle and asked one simple question? What outcome are you hoping to create with that comment? Now they're exposed. Now they're the one scrambling. You didn't swing back. You moved the entire arena. Because power in conflict doesn't come from volume. It comes from clarity, from control, from choosing stillness over scramble. Here's what most people don't see. Behind every argument, there's a need. Behind every jab, there's a pattern. Someone chooses to strike you in front of an audience. That's not about you. That's about their insecurity, their need to be seen, to dominate, to prove. And if you take it personally, you miss the lesson. But if you observe it, you gain the map. Conflict is data. It tells you where someone feels small, when they need control, what part of you triggers their ego, and in that data, you find the edge. Let's talk tactics. You've got 3 seconds when challenged to decide. Do you react emotionally, or do you pause, breathe, and hold your stillness? Because stillness creates pressure, not on you, on them. They're expecting you to bite, to crack, to fall into their rhythm. But when you don't, they lose the script. And when you do speak, speak with direction. Say, "We can solve this, but not with this energy. Let's focus on clarity, not conflict." These aren't defenses, they're pivots. They reset the game in your favor. But here's where the real shift happens. Start asking why people engage the way they do. Why now? Why this tone? Why in front of this audience? Because the moment you stop reacting to the noise and start decoding the signal, you rise above the game. Let me show you what this looked like for me. Rico, same man who betrayed me once, tried to call me out in a public forum, questioned my integrity, laughed like it was a joke. I could have burned the room down. I had the truth. I had the anger. I had the receipts. But I didn't flinch. I looked him in the eye and asked, "Is that the version of this story you feel proud telling?" He went quiet. Because I didn't fight his fire. I let him burn himself out. 1 week later, the people in that room no longer took his word seriously. Not because I argued better, but because I didn't argue at all. And you don't have to be loud to win. You just have to be anchored. Remember, the person who can stay grounded while everyone else reaches for chaos becomes the one everyone watches. Not to attack, but to follow. Most people play for the moment, the win, the clap back, the visible high ground. And that's exactly why they lose the actual game. Because life doesn't reward the loudest move. It rewards the one who saw it coming. In business, in conflict, in influence, the winner isn't the one who reacts fastest. It's the one who thinks furthest. Let me explain. Someone challenges you in a room full of people. The checker move, snap back, defend your pride. But the chess move, pause, watch, let the moment breathe. Then speak not to defend, but to shift the energy of the room. Say, let's make sure the focus stays on impact, not personalities. Now you've repositioned yourself from defensive to directional, from ego to authority. That's the difference between a move and a setup. Strategic thinkers don't live in this moment. They live 3 steps beyond it. They don't ask, how do I look right now? They ask, what pattern am I creating? And where will it lead me? because every move echoes. And if you want real influence, you don't just play the moment, you play the sequence. Here's the mindset. Before you speak, act, or agree to anything, pause and ask, if I say this, what's their next move? If I accept this, what's the long-term cost? If I react now, what rhythm am I setting? Most people never ask these questions. They're too addicted to the now. But the ones who do, they see the traps before they're built. Think about that shiny opportunity, the one with visibility, followers, quick success. Everyone says, take it, run with it. But you stop and ask, what contract comes with this? What strings are attached? Who am I aligning with? And where are they going? Because not every open door leads forward. Some just lead faster into a cage. And sometimes the move isn't action. It's timing. Holding your truth a little longer. Letting someone else overplay their hand. Watching in silence while they get too comfortable. That's not passivity, that's positioning. I remember doing this with Rico, back when he still thought he could outmaneuver me. He made a move in public, thought he caught me off guard. I said nothing. Let him feel the win. Let the room applaud. 3 weeks later, I made a quiet shift, talked to the right investor, slid the contract out from under him without ever raising my voice. Why? Because while he played checkers for applause, I played chess for the board. That's how real leverage is built. Silently, deliberately, unemotionally. So, before your next move, ask yourself, am I chasing a moment or building a pattern? Am I reacting or positioning? Do I want attention or control? Because when you start thinking 3 moves ahead, you don't just win arguments. You shift the entire tempo of the game. Others will wonder why they can't read you, why you always seem 1 beat out of reach. That's because while they're busy chasing now, you've already moved into next. And the final truth? The smartest ones in the room speak the softest, move the slowest, but hold the deepest strategy. That's how you stop reacting and start becoming inevitable. Most people live in reaction. They speak to prove. They argue to win. They rush to feel in control. But the ones who rise, they do something else entirely. They don't master others. They master themselves. They listen past the words. They watch what isn't said. They wield silence, not as a threat, but as precision. They read conflict, not as chaos, but as intel, and they never play the move in front of them. They play the one behind it. This isn't about dominance, it's about discipline. Because the person who stays still when others collapse, who holds tension without cracking, who thinks 3 moves ahead while everyone else plays checkers, that's the person the room starts watching. Power doesn't raise its voice, it doesn't beg to be seen, it sits quietly and shifts the atmosphere. I used to fight for space, for credit, for proof, for recognition. Now, I let silence speak. I let positioning speak. And if they still underestimate me, perfect. I move best in shadow. Because the game doesn't announce itself. It unfolds, quietly, strategically, unshakably. So next time chaos calls your name, pause and ask yourself, am I playing for applause or for position? Because the moment you stop chasing attention, that's when they start paying attention. Checkmate.
Play for the year, not the day, and you'll never have to fight for the same ground twice.